I realized my husband and my cousin were trying to kill me over my grandfather's land on the same night I brought her a bottle of wine and smiled like nothing was wrong. That is not a metaphor. That is not exaggeration. That is the moment my life split cleanly into before and after. The party was at my cousin's house, a wide, carefully staged suburban home with white walls that never showed fingerprints and furniture no one actually sat on. She liked hosting. She liked being seen as the generous one, the successful one, the daughter my grandmother always compared the rest of us to. I arrived late, not fashionably late, just late enough to miss the first round of hugs and the performative laughter. I remember thinking how quiet the driveway was. No music drifting outside, no voices, just the soft hum of the porch light and the smell of cut grass. Inside the house felt warm in a way that made my skin itch, the kind of warmth that comes from bodies packed too close together and secrets held too tight. My husband was already there. That should not have surprised me. He had insisted we come early, then changed his mind at the last minute, said he had something to finish up, kissed my cheek, avoided my eyes. I spotted him in the kitchen first, leaning against the counter like he belonged there, laughing too easily, his hand resting on my cousin's lower back in a way that lasted half a second too long. I told myself I was imagining it. That was my first mistake. My cousin turned when she felt my eyes on her. Her smile froze. Not completely, just enough. "Oh," she said, "you made it." Not "I'm glad you're here," not "it's been too long." "You made it." I handed her the wine. She took it without looking at the label, without thanking me, already turning back toward my husband. Something inside me tightened. I had known her my entire life. I knew every version of her smile. The one she used on strangers, the one she used on men, the one she used when she was winning. This was the last one. Dinner passed in fragments, conversations overlapping, plates clinking, someone mentioning Thanksgiving plans, someone else complaining about a forgotten birthday. My husband barely spoke to me. When he did, it was with the careful politeness reserved for acquaintances, not spouses. I noticed the way my cousin poured his drink before anyone else's, the way she laughed at his jokes before he finished telling them, the way they shared looks that did not include me. And still I told myself I was being paranoid, because paranoia is safer than the truth. It wasn't until I stepped into the hallway searching for the bathroom that I heard my name, not spoken, Wade. "She still doesn't know," my cousin said. My husband's voice followed, lower, controlled. "She doesn't need to. Once the papers are signed, it's done." My heart began to pound so loudly I was sure they could hear it. "The land is worth more than she thinks," my cousin said, "especially with the zoning change." "The will names her," my husband replied. "But wills can be challenged, especially if there are concerns." I pressed my hand against the wall. "Concerns." "She's fragile," my cousin said. "Always has been. Emotional, forgetful, you've seen it." "She trusts me," my husband said. I tasted metal. "We just need to push her a little," my cousin continued. "Stress, confusion, let her make a mistake. Then we step in. For her own good." "For her own good," my husband repeated. Something inside me broke cleanly. They were talking about my grandfather's land. The land he left to me because I was the only one who visited him when he got quiet. Because I listened when he repeated the same story. Because I stayed. They were talking about rewriting my life like a legal document. They were talking about me like I was already gone. I stepped back silently. My legs felt hollow, my mind sharp in a way it had never been before. I understood something then. This was not just betrayal. This was preparation. And if I did nothing, I would lose everything. Not just the land, not just the marriage. My name, my voice, my place in my own story. I returned to the party with a smile that felt borrowed. I laughed at the right moments. I hugged the right people. And while everyone else ate cake and talked about weddings and Christmas plans, I made a decision. I would not confront them. I would not cry. I would not warn them. I would let them believe I was exactly who they thought I was, and then I would take everything back. I did not sleep that night. I lay beside my husband, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slow, lazy circles above us, cutting the dark into pieces that never quite lined up again. His breathing was even, relaxed, the breathing of a man who believed his secrets were safe. Every few minutes my mind replayed the hallway, the tone of my cousin's voice, the calm certainty in my husband's. "Once the papers are signed, it's done. She trusts me." Trust. That word felt foreign now, like a language I used to speak fluently and had suddenly forgotten. I slipped out of bed before dawn, not quietly, deliberately. I wanted to see if he would stir. He didn't. In the kitchen, I poured coffee and watched the sky lighten through the window above the sink. This house, the one we lived in, had never truly felt like mine. I had paid for most of it, furnished it, maintained it. but something about it had always felt temporary, like a hotel room you keep neat because you know you're leaving. Now I understood why. I opened the drawer where we kept documents: insurance papers, tax returns, the will, my grandfather's will. I had read it before, of course, carefully, reverently. He had left me the land outright. No conditions, no shared ownership. He had even included a letter in his own shaky handwriting explaining why. You stayed. You listened. You didn't rush me. This land should belong to someone who understands patience. At the time, my cousin had hugged me and cried, told me how proud she was, how lucky I was. I wondered now how long she had been planning to take it. I copied the will. Every page. Every signature. Then I scanned it and sent a copy to an email address my husband didn't know existed. One I had created years earlier when I briefly considered leaving him and then convinced myself I was overreacting. Funny how instincts work. By the time he woke up, I was dressed and calm. "You're up early," he said, rubbing his eyes. "I couldn't sleep," I replied. "True, but incomplete." He poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter, the same counter where he had leaned at my cousin's house. The memory burned. "You seemed quiet last night," he said. "I had a headache," I replied. Another truth. Still incomplete. He nodded, satisfied. He always was when answers came easily. Over the next few days, I watched him the way you watch someone you realize you never truly knew. I noticed how often he texted, how he angled his phone away from me, how he started volunteering information unprompted. "I ran into your cousin today," he said one evening. "She asked about the land." My pulse stayed steady. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That you're still deciding what to do with it," he said. "I told her not to pressure you." Not pressure you. The audacity was almost impressive. I smiled. "Thank you." That night I drove past the land. It sat just outside town, quiet and unassuming. Acres of open space bordered by trees my grandfather had planted himself. He used to say land was the only thing people fought harder over than money. I parked and stepped out of the car. The air smelled like earth and rain. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the sound of his voice, the way he used to tap the hood of his truck twice before getting in, the way he called me kiddo long after I wasn't one anymore. "I won't let them take this," I whispered. What I didn't know yet was how far they were willing to go. The first sign came disguised as concern. My cousin invited me to lunch. Just the two of us. She chose a restaurant she knew I liked, mentioned how tired I looked, asked if everything was okay at home. "I worry about you," she said, reaching across the table. "You've been under so much stress." I almost laughed. "I'm fine," I said. She tilted her head. "You don't have to be strong all the time." Strong. Another word that suddenly carried weight. A week later, my husband suggested I see a doctor. "You've been forgetful," he said gently. "You left the stove on." I hadn't. "You misplaced your keys," he continued. "You forgot your appointment." I hadn't. I realized then what they were doing. Gaslighting is too small a word for it. This was a slow, careful erasure, a narrative being built piece by piece, fragile, emotional, confused, just like my cousin had described me. I started documenting everything: dates, conversations, text messages, changes in behavior. I saved voicemails, took screenshots, backed them up twice. Then I did something I hadn't planned on. I hired a lawyer. Not one my family knew, not one recommended by friends. A woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for handling inheritance disputes that turned ugly. She listened without interrupting as I laid everything out. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "They're not trying to scare you," she said. "They're trying to discredit you." "And the land?" I asked. She smiled thinly. "That's the prize." "What do?" I asked. She folded her hands. "You let them keep going." My stomach dropped. "You want me to let them hurt me?" "I want you to let them show who they are," she replied. "People like this always overreach. We just need to be ready when they do." I thought of my grandfather, of patience. "All right," I said. "Tell me what comes next." As I left her office, my phone buzzed. A message from my cousin. "We should talk. Something important has come up about the land." I stared at the screen. They were moving faster now, and I knew why. They thought I was already losing. I agreed to meet my cousin the next afternoon. Not at her house, not at mine. She suggested a quiet cafe near the courthouse downtown, the kind of place people chose when they wanted conversations to feel accidental and harmless. Neutral ground, public, safe. For her. I arrived early and chose a table near the window, back straight, hands folded loosely around my cup. I practiced my breathing the way my grandfather had taught me when I was younger and afraid of storms. Slow in, slower out. She walked in 5 minutes late. Of course she did. She looked flawless in a way that was almost aggressive. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, clothes chosen carefully to say successful but approachable. She hugged me longer than necessary, her cheek cool against mine. "You look tired," she said softly. There it was again. "I've been busy," I replied. She sat and ordered without asking what I wanted. Another small tell. Another assumption of control. "I'll get straight to it," she said once the server left. "I'm worried about you." I waited. "You've seemed off lately," she continued. "Forgetful, emotional, and with the land situation on top of everything." She sighed like this burden was hers to carry. "My husband mentioned you might be struggling," she said. "My husband." I let my shoulders slump a little, let my gaze drop to the table. I gave her exactly what she expected. "Maybe I am," I said quietly. Her eyes lit up. "Just a fraction, but I saw it. There's no shame in asking for help," she said. "Family should take care of each other." Family. Another word they were poisoning. "What kind of help?" I asked. She hesitated, then leaned in, lowered her voice. "I've been talking to a lawyer," she said, "just to explore options. You know, in case managing the land becomes too much." The audacity took my breath away. "You talked to a lawyer about my inheritance," I said. "Not behind your back," she said quickly. "For you. If something were to happen, stress can do terrible things. Something were to happen." I pictured the way my husband had said concerns, the way she had said push her a little. "What are you suggesting?" I asked. She reached across the table and covered my hand. Her touch was warm, familiar, calculated. "We could set up a temporary arrangement," she said. "Power of attorney. Just until things settle down. You wouldn't have to worry about paperwork or decisions." "And the land?" I asked. "It would stay in the family," she said, "where it belongs." The words landed like a slap. I pulled my hand back slowly. "I need time to think." She nodded, relief flickering across her face. "Of course, take all the time you need." But her tone said the opposite. That evening, my husband was waiting when I got home. He didn't ask how lunch went. He already knew. "I ran into your cousin today," he said. "She's really worried about you." I met his eyes, held them. "Are you?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just long enough." "I just want what's best for you," he said. I nodded. "Me too." That night, I pretended to forget to lock the door. Not because I wanted to test him, but because I wanted to see how quickly he noticed. He checked it 3 times before bed. The next morning, I received an email from a clinic I had never contacted. An appointment confirmation, a cognitive assessment. My name, my date of birth, scheduled without my consent. I forwarded it to my lawyer immediately. She called me within minutes. "They're escalating," she said. "This is good." Good was not the word I would have chosen. By the end of the week, my husband suggested we host a small family dinner. Just us, my cousin, a few relatives. He framed it as support. I said yes. Because I understood something now. They weren't just trying to take my land. They were trying to build a story where they were the heroes and I was the problem. And stories once believed are very hard to undo, unless you control the ending. As I set the table that night, I slipped a small recorder into my pocket, the kind that looks like a key fob. Legal, discreet. My heart raced, but my hands were steady. They thought they were laying a trap for me. They didn't realize I was already inside it. The dinner was supposed to feel intimate. That was the word my husband used. Intimate meant controlled. Intimate meant everyone seated close enough that silence felt suspicious, and every reaction could be watched. I cooked dishes my cousin loved, roasted chicken with herbs, a side she once asked me for the recipe for and never made herself. I set the table with the good plates, the ones my grandmother used to bring out on holidays when appearances mattered more than comfort. When they arrived, my cousin kissed my cheek and whispered, "I'm so glad you're doing this." Doing this, as if hosting my own family was an act of recovery. The recorder was already on. Dinner unfolded like a play where everyone knew their lines except me. Except I did know them now. I just pretended I didn't. They talked about family business, about a wedding coming up next spring, about Christmas plans, about how hard it was to keep everyone together these days. Every topic circled back to concern. "You've lost weight," my aunt said. "Are you eating enough?" "You seem distracted," my cousin added. "Have you been sleeping?" My husband reached for my hand, squeezed gently. A public display of devotion. A private warning. "I worry about her," he said. "She carries so much." I smiled. I manage. There was a pause, just long enough. Then my cousin cleared her throat. "I didn't want to bring this up tonight," she said. "But since we're all here," my stomach tightened. "We've noticed some things," she continued. "Small things. Forgetfulness. Confusion. And with the land situation." My grandmother frowned. "What land situation?" My cousin glanced at my husband. He nodded. "The land our father left her," my cousin said. "It's been stressful, for all of us." My grandmother turned to me. "Is that true?" I took a breath, let it shake a little. "I've been overwhelmed," I said. "I didn't want to burden anyone." My cousin's hand found my arm. "See, that's exactly what we mean." My husband stood. The movement drew every eye. "We think it might be best if we explored some safeguards," he said. "Just temporarily, to protect her interests." "Safeguards." My grandmother's voice sharpened. "What kind of safeguards?" "A medical evaluation," my cousin said quickly. "Nothing serious, just to make sure she's okay." There it was, out loud now, on record. "I don't want that," I said softly. Everyone looked at me. "You don't have to decide tonight," my husband said, "but we need to be responsible." Responsible. Another word turned into a weapon. "I trust her," my grandmother said slowly. "Your grandfather trusted her." My cousin smiled tightly. "Of course, but sometimes love clouds judgment." I felt something inside me go still, not cold, focused. "I'll do it," I said. The room froze. "You will?" my husband asked. "I'll do the evaluation," I said, "if it eases everyone's mind." Relief washed over their faces too quickly. But I continued, "I want to choose the doctor, and I want my lawyer present." Silence. "That's not necessary," my cousin said. "It is to me," I replied. My husband's jaw tightened. "You're being defensive." "No," I said, "I'm being careful." The dinner ended early. After everyone left, my husband closed the door and turned to me. "What was that?" he asked. "I agreed to what you wanted," I said. "On your terms," he snapped. "My terms have always been my terms," I replied. "You just forgot." That night he slept on the couch. The next day I met my lawyer again. She listened to the recording in silence. When it ended, she nodded once. "They've crossed a line." "What now?" I asked. "Now we prepare for the counter," she said. The evaluation came back clean, clear, undeniable. Healthy, competent, fully capable. I sent copies to my husband, to my cousin, to my grandmother. My cousin called me immediately. "This doesn't change our concern," she said. "It changes everything," I replied. She hung up. A week later, I received notice that a petition had been filed questioning my capacity to manage my inheritance, filed by my cousin, with my husband listed as a concerned party. I stared at the document for a long time. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was over. They had made it official. And once something is official, it can be dismantled. Piece by piece, the petition arrived on a Tuesday morning, folded too neatly to be accidental. I stood at the kitchen counter reading it once, then again, my coffee growing cold beside me. Legal language has a way of sounding polite while saying the most violent things. Words like concern capacity, best interest. Each one carefully chosen to suggest love while stripping a person of control. My cousin's name sat at the top of the page. My husband's followed. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I felt something quieter and far more dangerous settle into place. Clarity. When my lawyer arrived that afternoon, she didn't bother pretending this was unexpected. "They're trying to force a conservatorship," she said. "Limited at first. Financial decisions, the land. Then they expand." "And my husband?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "He's positioning himself as cooperative, reasonable, the good spouse." I nodded. "How long do we have?" "Before the first hearing, a few weeks," she said. But the real clock started the moment they filed. That night, my husband cooked dinner. He had never been much for cooking. The smell of garlic and onions filled the house in a way that felt theatrical. "I thought we could talk," he said, setting a plate in front of me. "About what?" I asked. "About us," he replied. "About the stress, the misunderstandings." Misunderstandings, as if this were a scheduling conflict. "I don't think there's anything to misunderstand," I said. He sat across from me, leaned forward, lowered his voice. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "If you just cooperate, this can all be resolved quietly." Quietly for whom, I asked. "For everyone," he said, "you included." I looked at the man I had married. The man who had held my hand at my grandfather's funeral. The man who had stood beside me when the will was read and squeezed my fingers like he was proud. "When did you decide I was a problem?" I asked. He blinked. "Once. That's not fair." "No," I said. "What you're doing is unfair." He stood abruptly. "You're being emotional." There it was, the word they all leaned on. "I'm being precise," I said. He stared at me for a long moment, then exhaled sharply. "You need rest." "I need honesty," I replied. He didn't answer. The next morning I did something my lawyer had suggested, but I hadn't been ready for until now. I moved money, not everything, just enough, from our joint account into one solely in my name, perfectly legal, carefully documented. I forwarded the confirmation to my lawyer. Then I called my grandmother. We met at her house that afternoon. The old one. The one filled with photographs and worn furniture and memories that smelled like dust and tea. She listened as I told her everything, not the polished version, not the careful one, the truth. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I wondered," she said finally. "Wondered what?" I asked. "I wondered why your cousin was suddenly so interested in your grandfather's land," she said. "She never visited him. Not once." My throat tightened. "I didn't want to believe it," she continued, "but I believe you." She reached for my hand. Her grip was still strong. "If they want to fight," she said, "they picked the wrong family." That night, my cousin sent me a message. "We don't have to do this the hard way. I replied with a single sentence. You already chose the hard way. I knew then that the next phase had begun. No more whispers, no more pretending. They had forced this into the open. And in the open, I intended to win. The first hearing was scheduled for early autumn, a season my grandfather used to say revealed people's true nature. Things either held together or they didn't. There was no hiding in fall. Everything thinned. Everything showed. My husband insisted on driving me to court. I want to be supportive, he said, already holding the keys. I told him I would meet him there. His smile tightened. You don't have to shut me out. I'm not, I said. I'm setting boundaries. He didn't like that word. None of them did. The courthouse smelled like old paper and polished floors, the kind of place where voices lowered automatically, as if truth itself required permission to be spoken. My cousin was already there, sitting with her lawyer. She wore gray, neutral, respectable. Her hair pulled back in a way that suggested discipline. She looked relieved when she saw me arrive alone. Then my lawyer appeared at my side. Her presence shifted the air. She didn't smile. She didn't rush. She carried herself like someone who understood the difference between drama and evidence. The hearing itself was procedural, dry. On the surface, it sounded almost reasonable, concerns raised, temporary measures proposed. Best interests emphasized again and again until the phrase lost all meaning. My cousin spoke first. She talked about worry, about sleepless nights, about how much she loved me, about how hard it was to watch someone you care about struggle. I watched her hands as she spoke. They didn't shake, they didn't clench, they were calm. Too calm. My husband followed. He described me as sensitive, overwhelmed, vulnerable. He said he admired my independence but feared it had become a burden. He said he just wanted to protect me. I wondered how many times he had practiced those sentences. When it was my turn, my lawyer stood. She didn't argue emotion with emotion. She didn't plead. She presented. The clean medical evaluation, the recordings, the timeline, the emails arranging an assessment without my consent, the petition filed days after I refused to hand over control. Piece by piece, she laid out a pattern. This is not concern, she said. This is coordination. The judge listened, asked questions, took notes, then looked at me directly. How do you feel about these proceedings, he asked. I stood. My legs felt steady. My voice surprised me with its calm. I feel betrayed, I said, but I also feel clear. Silence settled. The judge denied the immediate request for conservatorship, ordered further review, cautioned against unilateral actions. Not a victory, not yet, but not a loss. Outside the courtroom, my cousin approached me. This isn't over, she said quietly. No, I replied. It isn't. That night, my husband didn't come home. I didn't call. The next morning, I discovered he had frozen one of our joint accounts. Not all of them, just enough to inconvenience, to send a message. I forwarded the notice to my lawyer. She replied with 2 words, as expected. A week later, something else happened. The land changed. Not physically, legally. A notice appeared. A development inquiry. A preliminary zoning request filed in my cousin's name. She had moved without me. She had assumed she would win. I drove out to the property that afternoon, walked the perimeter, ran my fingers along the fence my grandfather had repaired himself. I felt anger then, real anger, hot and sharp and grounding. They didn't just want the land. They wanted to rewrite history. That night, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my grandfather's old friend, a man who had helped him fight a similar battle decades ago when a larger company tried to pressure him into selling. He listened quietly. Then he said, if they're pushing this hard, it means they're already exposed. I slept better than I had in weeks. The next day, my lawyer called. We've uncovered something, she said. Your cousin's finances. There's a pressure point. My pulse quickened. What kind? The kind that explains the urgency, she said. And the recklessness. I sat down slowly. Tell me everything I said. Because I understood now. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was leverage. And leverage used carefully changes everything. The pressure point was debt. Not the dramatic kind people talk about at dinner parties. Not a single mistake or a failed gamble. It was quieter than that. Layered. Hidden behind shell companies and friendly loans and obligations disguised as favors. My cousin had built her life on appearances. The house, the dinners, the image of stability. But underneath it all, she was bleeding money. She's leveraged against future development, my lawyer said, sliding documents across the table. The zoning change she's counting on hasn't happened yet. Without it, she's exposed. And the land, I asked. That's the linchpin, she replied. If she controls your property, she can bundle it. Sell it. Refinance. It buys her time. Time. The one thing she didn't have. I closed my eyes, thought of the dinner, the concern, the urgency. They weren't trying to steal from me because they wanted more. They were trying because they were desperate. What about my husband, I asked. My lawyer hesitated. He's more involved than we thought. She showed me a transfer. Money moving between accounts tied to my cousin's business and one my husband had opened without my knowledge. The betrayal landed differently this time. Not like a knife, like confirmation. I wasn't married to a fool. I was married to an accomplice. That night he came home late. Smelled like a hotel bar. Not drunk. Careful. We need to talk, he said. So do I replied. He sat, rubbed his hands together. A habit he had when he wanted control but didn't have it yet. You're pushing back too hard, he said. You're making yourself look unreasonable. Is that what they told you, I asked? He stiffened. This isn't about them. It never is, I said, until it is. He leaned forward. If you don't cooperate, this will get ugly. I met his gaze. It already is. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The next morning, I made a call my lawyer didn't know about, to the developer who had filed the zoning inquiry. He was polite, curious, cautious. I own the land outright, I told him. And I'm not selling. There was a pause. Your cousin indicated otherwise, he said. She doesn't speak for me, I replied. And any further contact through her will be considered interference. Another pause, longer. Understood, he said. By the end of the day, the inquiry was withdrawn. My cousin called me that evening. Her voice shook, just slightly. You had no right, she said. I had every right, I replied. It's my land. You're ruining everything, she snapped. No, I said calmly. I'm stopping you. Silence. Then softer. You don't understand what this will cost me. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You should have thought about that before you tried to erase me, I said. She hung up. 2 days later, my husband was served at work. Divorce papers, financial disclosure requests, a motion to separate assets immediately. He called me in a panic. You blindsided me, he said. No, I replied. I woke up. The real twist, though, came that night. My lawyer called after midnight. There's something else, she said. Your cousin didn't start this alone. My stomach tightened. Who else? She exhaled slowly. Your grandmother's estate, she said. There's a clause no one noticed, and someone's been trying to amend it. The room felt suddenly very small. Who, I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, your cousin and your husband, together. I sat in the dark, the truth finally complete. They weren't just stealing land. They were rewriting the future of the entire family. And they thought they could do it quietly. They were wrong. I drove to my grandmother's house before sunrise. The sky was pale and undecided, the kind of light that makes everything feel unfinished. I had slept maybe an hour. My mind kept replaying the same sentence. They were trying to amend the estate, not challenge it, not interpret it differently, rewrite it. I parked in the driveway I'd known since childhood and sat there longer than necessary, hands on the wheel, breathing through the anger until it settled into something colder, something useful. My grandmother was already awake. She always was. You look like your grandfather did when he knew someone was lying to him, she said, as she poured tea. I told her everything. The clause, the attempted amendment, the transfers, the zoning play, the conservatorship petition. I didn't soften it. I didn't protect anyone. When I finished, she stared into her cup for a long time. They underestimated you, she said finally. They underestimated you, I replied. She nodded once. They always do. She stood and walked to the study, opened a drawer I'd never seen her open before. Inside were documents neatly stacked, copies of wills, letters, notes in my grandfather's handwriting. He didn't trust Easy, she said. Neither do I. She handed me a letter addressed to her, dated years ago. If they try to change things after I'm gone, it means they never listened while I was alive. The clause my lawyer had found was there, a safeguard. If any beneficiary attempted to manipulate, coerce, or undermine another beneficiary regarding inherited property, they forfeited their claim entirely. No partial loss, no negotiation. Everything. My cousin hadn't just overreached. She had detonated her own future. My lawyer's voice was steady when I told her. This changes the leverage, she said, dramatically. That afternoon, my cousin requested a meeting. Urgent, private. I agreed. On my terms. We met at her house, the same one where the party had started all of this. The furniture still untouched, the silence heavier now. She didn't offer me a drink. We need to talk, she said. We've been talking, I replied. She paced, stopped, faced me. You don't understand how bad this is, she said. If this comes out, I lose everything. You should have thought about that, I said, before you tried to take mine. Her voice broke. I was drowning. I studied her then, really looked. The cracks were everywhere once you knew where to look. You could have asked for help, I said. She laughed bitterly. You were always the favorite. The word hit me harder than I expected. I was the one who showed up, I said quietly. She flinched. I can fix this, she said suddenly. We can fix this. I'll withdraw everything, the petition, the zoning, all of it. And my husband, I asked. Her silence answered me. I want it all in writing, I said. Every withdrawal, every admission. Her eyes narrowed. You're enjoying this. No, I said, I'm finishing it. That night, my husband showed up unannounced. He looked smaller somehow, less certain. We can still salvage this, he said, if you just stop. Stop what I asked. Pushing, he said. I laughed then, a short sound, sharp. You tried to erase me, I said. This is what happens when you fail. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. If you expose her, you expose me, he said. Think about that. I have, I replied, every day. I handed him a folder. Inside were copies, transfers, messages, recordings, everything. He flipped through it, panic rising with each page. You won't, he said. You wouldn't. I already have, I replied. The next morning, my lawyer filed motions that set everything in motion. Enforcement of the estate clause, sanctions, a formal complaint outlining coordination and coercion. The response was immediate. My cousin's lawyer called, then emailed, then called again. My husband's lawyer followed. They wanted to talk. They wanted to negotiate. They wanted silence. I wanted resolution. The court date was set, and for the first time since the party, I felt something close to peace, because the truth was no longer something I carried alone. It was on paper, on record, in motion. And once truth starts moving, it doesn't stop. The courthouse looked different the second time. Not because it had changed, but because I had. The fear that once tightened my chest was gone, replaced by a quiet certainty. I knew where every path led now. I knew which doors would close and which ones would open, no matter how hard they tried to hold them shut. The hearing drew more people than the first. Family, lawyers, strangers who always seemed to appear when money and scandal crossed paths. My cousin sat 2 rows ahead of me. She didn't turn around. My husband arrived late. He avoided my eyes. When proceedings began, the room settled into that familiar hush, where every cough felt too loud. The judge reviewed the filings, the clause, the evidence of coordination. This court takes allegations of coercion seriously, he said, especially within families. My lawyer spoke with precision. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize. She let the facts do what facts do best when they're undeniable. The attempted amendment, the zoning maneuver, the financial transfers, the recorded conversations. A pattern emerged undeniable and ugly. My cousin's lawyer tried to reframe it as misunderstanding, as desperation born from stress, as family conflict blown out of proportion. The judge listened, then asked one question. Why was the beneficiary never informed? Silence. That was the moment everything tipped. By the time the ruling came, my cousin was pale. Her hands trembled in her lap. The court upheld the clause. She forfeited her claim, not just to my grandfather's land, to any future interest tied to the estate. Gasps rippled through the room. My husband shifted. Sweat darkened his collar. The judge turned to him next. As a named participant, he said, you will be subject to further review. The words landed heavy. Outside the courtroom, my cousin collapsed into a chair. Her lawyer whispered urgently. She didn't respond. My husband followed me into the hallway. You didn't have to do this, he said. Yes, I replied. I did. That afternoon, the family divided in the way families always do when truth becomes inconvenient. Some called me brave. Others called me cruel. A few said nothing at all. I didn't care. That night I packed. Not in anger, with intention. I took only what was mine. Documents, clothes, photographs. The small things my grandfather had given me that no one else ever noticed. I left the rest. When my husband came home, the house was half empty. What are you doing? He asked. Leaving, I said. You can't just walk away, he said. I already have, I replied. The next morning, the news spread faster than I expected. Whispers at work, messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, questions framed as concern. I answered none of them. Instead, I went back to the land, stood in the center of it, let the quiet settle into my bones. This place had survived attempts to take it before. It would survive this too. A week later, my cousin filed for bankruptcy. The developer pulled out completely. My husband's accounts were frozen pending investigation. Still something lingered. One loose end. The marriage itself. My lawyer called me one evening. He's contesting the divorce, she said, claiming reconciliation is possible. I laughed. Of course he is. There's more, she added. He's offering a settlement. I listened as she outlined it. Concessions, silence, a clean break. And I asked, and I think he's afraid of what else you know, she said. I thought of the recordings, the messages, the things he said when he thought I was breaking. I'm not done, I said. She smiled even over the phone. I could hear it. Neither is the court, she replied. The final confrontation was coming, and this time it wouldn't be about land. It would be about accountability. The mediation was scheduled on a gray morning that felt deliberately neutral, like the weather itself had been instructed not to take sides. I arrived alone. That mattered to me. I didn't want the quiet strength of my lawyer beside me just yet. I wanted him to see me walk in on my own steady and unafraid before I sat down and let the process begin. My husband was already there. He looked different, thinner, less polished. The confidence he used to wear so easily now slipped off him in moments of silence. He stood when he saw me, then hesitated, unsure whether that courtesy still applied. "It's good to see you," he said. "It isn't," I replied and sat down. The mediator began with practiced calm, explaining ground rules, reminding us this was a space for resolution, not accusation. I listened politely, but my attention stayed on my husband's hands. They kept clasping and unclasping like he was holding on to something that kept trying to escape. "I want to resolve this peacefully," my husband said when it was his turn. "We've both been through a lot." That sentence alone told me everything. He wanted the narrative of shared suffering, mutual blame, a soft landing. "I've made mistakes," he continued, "but so have you." I smiled slightly. "Name one." He blinked. "You shut me out." "No," I said. "I stopped letting you lie to me." The mediator cleared his throat. My husband leaned forward. "I'm willing to walk away without touching the land, without contesting the estate. I just want this to end." "And the money you moved," I asked. "The accounts you opened." He looked at the table. "That can be discussed." "And the medical assessment you tried to arrange without my consent?" I continued. "That was concern," he said quickly. "No," I replied. "That was strategy." The mediator raised a hand. "Let's keep this constructive." "I am," I said. "This is the most honest conversation we've had in years." My husband exhaled sharply. "What do you want?" The question hung between us. I thought of every night I had blamed myself, every moment I had felt small, every time I had softened my instincts so he could feel comfortable. "I want the truth on record," I said, in writing, under oath if necessary. His head snapped up. "Why?" "Because silence is what got us here," I said. "And I'm done protecting you from the consequences of your choices." The mediation ended without agreement. As I left, my lawyer joined me in the hallway. "He's unraveling," she said quietly. "That makes him dangerous." "Or desperate," I replied. "Sometimes those look the same," she said. 2 days later, my husband made his move. He went to my grandmother. I found out when she called me, her voice tight with anger. "He tried to explain himself," she said. "Tried to paint you as unforgiving." And I asked, "And he forgot who I am," she said, "and who raised you?" I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. "He admitted more than he realized," she added. I recorded the conversation. I smiled for the first time that day. When my lawyer heard the recording, she laughed softly. "He just handed us the last piece," she said. The court date was moved up. Expedited. The judge cited new evidence and concerns about continued manipulation. The night before the hearing, my husband texted me. "We can still stop this." I stared at the screen, then typed my response. "You should have stopped before you tried to erase me." The hearing itself was swift. Evidence presented, recordings played, financial records reviewed. My husband's lawyer tried to argue intent, stress, poor judgment. The judge wasn't interested. "This court does not reward calculated betrayal," he said. The ruling came down clean. The divorce was granted. Assets separated in my favor. A referral was made for further investigation into financial misconduct. As we stood to leave, my husband finally looked at me. "You didn't have to destroy me," he said. I met his gaze. "You destroyed yourself. I just stopped pretending you hadn't." Outside, the air felt lighter. One chapter closed. One remained. Because justice, I had learned, isn't just about punishment. It's about what you choose to build after everything burns down. The house was finally quiet. Not the tense quiet I had lived with for years, where every silence felt like something waiting to happen. This was different. Settled. Honest. I moved into a small rental near the land while everything finalized. It wasn't fancy, just clean, bright, and mine. I slept better there than I had in a long time. The fallout moved through the family like a slow wave. Some relatives called to apologize, others called to explain themselves. A few tried to justify what they had ignored for too long. I listened without engaging. Healing doesn't require consensus. My cousin disappeared from family gatherings entirely. Her bankruptcy became public. Her reputation unraveled the way carefully constructed images always do when exposed to daylight. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't need to. One afternoon, my lawyer called with a tone I recognized as satisfied. "The investigation is moving forward," she said. "Your husband has been formally questioned." "And her?" I asked. "She's cooperating," she replied, which usually means she's scared. That night, I drove out to the land again. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the grass. I walked slowly, letting the quiet wrap around me. I thought about the woman I had been at the party, smiling, oblivious, carrying wine and trust into a room where neither was deserved. I didn't feel embarrassed anymore. I felt proud that I had survived that version of myself. My grandmother joined me a few days later. We sat on folding chairs near the old fence, sipping tea from thermoses like we used to when my grandfather was still alive. "He'd be proud of you," she said. "I hope so," I replied. "He would be," she said firmly, "not because you fought, but because you didn't let them turn you into something you're not." The words settled deep. I began making plans for the land, not development, preservation, a small trust, something that honored patience instead of profit. When the final paperwork arrived, I signed it slowly, intentionally. No rush, no fear. My phone buzzed as I finished, a message from my cousin. I was wrong. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I put the phone down. Some apologies come too late to matter. The final hearing wrapped quietly. No drama, no spectacle, just conclusions. The judge's words echoed in my mind as I left the courtroom for the last time. This court recognizes not just the outcome, but the conduct that led here. Conduct, choices, accountability. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. I began to write. Not a statement, not a defense. A record. Because stories like this don't stay contained. They ripple outward. They warn. They teach. And they remind people that silence is not the same as peace. As I closed my laptop, I realized something else. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. The first snowfall came early that year. I watched it from the window of the small house I had rented near the land, the flakes falling slowly, deliberately, like the world had decided to reset itself without asking permission. I wrapped my hands around a warm mug and let myself be still. For the first time since that night at my cousin's party, nothing was chasing me. The legal matters concluded quietly. No headlines, no dramatic statements, just signature stamps and doors closing behind me one by one. The investigation into my ex-husband's finances continued without my involvement. Whatever came of it would no longer define my life. I had already reclaimed it. I spent more time on the land, walking it, listening to it. I marked the trees my grandfather had planted, repaired the fence the way he taught me, 2 taps on the post before moving on. I thought about everything that had been taken from me before I even realized it was gone. My trust, my sense of safety, the illusion that loyalty was automatic within family. What surprised me most was not the betrayal. It was how many people expected me to shrink afterward, to soften the truth, to make peace by pretending nothing had happened. I refused. Peace is not silence. Peace is alignment. I finalized the trust for the land in early winter. Its purpose was simple: preservation, education, access for people who respected it. No sales, no leverage, no shortcuts. When I signed the last document, I felt something settle into place inside me. Not relief. Completion. My grandmother attended the small meeting where everything was formalized. She held my hand afterward and smiled in that quiet way she had when she knew a lesson had landed. They never understood, she said, that what they wanted wasn't worth what it would cost them. I nodded. I don't think they ever stopped wanting. That night I recorded this story. Not for revenge, not for validation. For the women who would hear it and recognize themselves in the pauses, in the doubt, in the moment when something feels wrong but you're told it's love. If you're listening to this and you feel that tightening in your chest, trust it. If someone is trying to make you smaller so they can stand taller, that is not care. If someone calls your clarity and stability, that is fear talking. I lost a marriage, I lost a cousin, I lost an entire version of my life. What I gained was myself, and that is not something anyone can take from me again. If this story resonated with you, if you've lived a version of it, or if you're standing at the beginning of your own reckoning, I hope you'll stay.
Like a comment, subscribe.
Not for me, for yourself, because the truth once spoken has a way of finding exactly who needs it.